My wife and I have been married since 2001 and together since 1999. 20-plus years of building a life together, of shared dreams and quiet mornings and inside jokes that nobody else would understand. She is the most intelligent, thoughtful, caring, loyal person I know. Or at least she was. I've always thought of myself as fortunate, incredibly, impossibly fortunate, to have met and married her. She's beautiful. Even today at 51 she turns heads. Men have told her this throughout our marriage, compliments offered at grocery stores and gas stations and work functions. She's always shot them down without hesitation, always made it clear that she was taken, that I was enough. That knowledge gave me a quiet confidence, a security in our relationship that felt unshakable. Earlier this year, everything changed. She was diagnosed with uterine cancer, stage 1. The words hit like a freight train, even though the doctors assured us it was caught early. She had a full hysterectomy and I was never really concerned about the cancer itself. It was diagnosed quickly, dealt with efficiently, and she made a full recovery. I took time off work to look after her after the surgery. We handled it together. There were some emotional moments, which was to be expected. I'm not naturally an emotional person, but we navigated through them as a team. After her recovery, something shifted in her. She became insistent that we start living life to the fullest. She wanted to make up for lost time, to seize every moment as if it might be our last. We took a 10-day trip to Europe, followed by a trip to Belize. We have another trip planned to the UK and Spain and Portugal later this year. I was fine with all of it, building memories, crossing bucket list adventures off our list. I understood that these desires came from feeling fragile, from staring down mortality and realizing how precious and fleeting life can be. She also took up yoga, swimming, and healthy cooking classes. She was transforming herself, reinventing who she was in the aftermath of facing death. I was fully on board with all of it. Supportive, encouraging, present. Until last week. Last week, she came home from work and told me she wanted a hall pass. A one-time opportunity for her to have sex with someone else besides me. Just once, she said. Just this one time, and then everything would go back to normal. I sat there on our couch in the living room where we'd celebrated birthdays and anniversaries and ordinary Tuesday evenings, and tried to process what she was saying. She explained that since her cancer diagnosis, her outlook on life had changed. She didn't want to be handcuffed from doing things she wanted to do. She said there was this guy at her work, someone she'd always had some attraction to. He was leaving the company soon, moving away, and she would never see him again. This was the perfect opportunity to sleep with someone else, she said. A once-in-a-lifetime chance that wouldn't affect our marriage because the guy would be gone, out of our lives as if it never happened. She said I could say no, of course. But then she added that if I did refuse, she would be mad and disappointed at me for an indeterminate amount of time, and it would be confirmation of my male toxicity and insecurity. Male toxicity. Insecurity. These were the words she chose to describe my potential refusal to let my wife of 20 years sleep with another man. I don't consider myself toxic. And if not wanting your wife to have sex with someone else makes me insecure, then yes, I guess I'm insecure. I told her I appreciated her talking to me about it. At least she was honest, at least she wasn't sneaking around, but that approval via coercion isn't real approval. I also said I didn't appreciate her language, the way she was preemptively attacking my character based on a reaction I hadn't even had yet. This was a massive issue, something that could affect the rest of our marriage, the rest of our lives together. It deserved to be treated with more respect than threats and ultimatums. The next morning, I woke up hoping we'd have a real conversation. That maybe she'd realized what she was asking, how unreasonable it was, how much it would hurt me. Instead, she told me she was sorry for putting such a large decision solely on my shoulders, and that to help me she was taking the decision away from me entirely. She'd booked a hotel near where her co-workers were having a party, a send-off for this guy who was leaving. She would spend the night there. With him. And she hoped I would be there when she got back. She said she would answer any questions I had about the night after it happened, but not before. She refused to tell me who he was or anything about him, because she knows me too well and that I will dwell and obsess over him. Knowing these details would make it too real for me, she said. Which was accurate. I absolutely would have obsessed, would have driven myself crazy imagining every detail. Her point of view was that the less I knew, the better. But that contradicted her offer to tell me anything I wanted to know afterward. I suspected she knew I wouldn't want to ask anything, or that she simply wouldn't tell me even if I did ask. Part of me thought, at least she's been honest with me. At least she didn't just cheat and hide it. She's been through a lot since finding out she had cancer. Maybe I should just let it happen. I don't have any concept of what she went through, What it's like to face your own mortality at 51 and realize how fragile everything is. I can't dismiss how that affected her mental state, her outlook on life. Part of me wanted to put my foot down and say this absolutely would not happen, and deal with whatever consequences came from that decision. Her best friend called me callous for even suggesting I wouldn't let it happen. "You have no idea what she went through," she said, her voice dripping with judgment. As if surviving cancer gave my wife a free pass to destroy our marriage. I found it hard to believe she was really okay with throwing away 20+ years of marriage over some guy she'd had no relationship with outside of work. Maybe I should call her bluff. But maybe she was thinking similarly, that I wouldn't throw away the marriage over one encounter. That I'd swallow my pride and my hurt and my sense of betrayal because 20 years together was worth more than one night. I didn't know what to do. One moment I empathized with her, understood her need to feel alive after facing death. The next moment I was furious, feeling manipulated and disrespected and completely powerless. Part of me wanted to know, who is this guy? What does he look like? What does he have that's so enthralling that she'd risk everything we've built together? Is he just a safe option, someone leaving town who can't complicate things long-term? Is he married? Does his wife know what's about to happen? Would I be a callous asshole for saying no? What could I do besides walk away? I was trapped between two impossible choices: accept her infidelity and never view her the same way again, or go through a divorce at 54 and rebuild my entire life from scratch. Neither option felt remotely acceptable. She thought that because she would never see this guy again because I'd supposedly never met him, it wouldn't really affect me or our marriage in the long term. She was wrong. So catastrophically wrong. I told her I was a hard no. I said I wasn't sure how I would feel about her if she went ahead with it. I tried to make my position crystal clear, hoping that my opposition would give her pause, make her reconsider, help her understand what she was about to destroy. It didn't work. She left on Saturday ostensibly to meet her co-workers, but in reality to fuck this guy. Before she left, I asked her to text me when she was leaving for the bar. When she did, I asked one more time, "Are you really going to go through with this?" Her response was cold and final. "I am not answering any more questions tonight. I will see you tomorrow." I blocked my wife. Then I did something either incredibly stupid or absolutely brilliant. I'm still not sure which. I went to the bar where the get-together was happening. Not inside, I couldn't stomach that. I sat on a transit bench across the street and waited. I needed to know who this guy was. Maybe to compare myself against him. To see what he had that I didn't. To understand what was so special about him that she would ruin a marriage for. The not knowing was driving me insane. I waited for what felt like an eternity. My mind was racing with thoughts of what was happening inside that bar, whether she was flirting with him, whether she'd already decided to go through with it or if there was still a chance she'd change her mind. Eventually people started leaving. A woman I recognized from my wife's office got in a cab. Then a larger group came out and they were all hugging one man, shaking his hand, clearly the guest of honor at this send-off party. I assumed I'd found my guy. I didn't see my wife. For a brief, hopeful moment, I thought maybe she'd called it all off. Maybe she'd come to her senses, realized what she was about to lose, and decided I was worth more than whatever this was. I unblocked her phone to check for messages. There were none. Everyone said their goodbyes and dispersed. The guy stood outside alone for a few minutes. And then my wife came out of the bar. She looked around, checking to make sure I wasn't there probably. Then she took his hand and started walking away with him. Of all the emotions I'd been cycling through, trepidation, sadness, anger, grief, it was disgust that really captured what I felt in that moment. This guy was short, fat, and bald. All the things I'm not. I'm not saying that to be cruel, just factual. My wife, this stunning woman who looks like Linda Carter, who could have her pick of men, was choosing this particular man to betray me with. Ultimately, I felt like a pervert for watching from a distance, like I'd degraded myself by being there. I followed them until they reached the hotel and then I turned around and went home. I woke up Sunday morning with absolute clarity about what I needed to do. I put a lock on the master bedroom door. I moved all her things to the spare room and left a note asking her to find other accommodations as quickly as possible. Then I visited a friend who's a lawyer. He gave me some sage advice and several recommendations for divorce attorneys, and made introductions on my behalf. My wife had been calling me numerous times since around 11 in the morning. With her number blocked, the calls went straight to voicemail. I listened to the first couple of messages and felt nothing but grim satisfaction hearing the growing concern in her voice as she realized she couldn't reach me. I didn't want to go home, but I'd left in such a hurry that I hadn't planned an overnight stay properly. I got home around 9 that evening. Following my friend's advice, I recorded our interaction. I was halfway up the stairs when she came up from the family room. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice panicked. "Could we talk? I thought we talked about this." I just answered, "I'm not interested in discussing this tonight." Then I went into the bedroom and closed the door. She tried to talk to me through the door for a while, but eventually gave up and left me alone. I felt kind of like a child for not talking with her, for shutting the door on her. But I couldn't look at her. I physically couldn't stand to see her face. Monday morning I got up and ready for work. She was waiting for me, ambushing me before I could leave. "Can we discuss getting back to normal?" she asked. I looked at her and said, "You've been doing all the talking for both of us for the last week. Why don't you continue?" Then I left for work. I had an appointment scheduled with the divorce attorneys my friend recommended for later that week. Here's the thing, I was more disgusted by who she chose than by the sex itself. Does that make sense? It wasn't just that she'd cheated, it was that she'd thrown away everything we had for someone so thoroughly unremarkable. Someone she would never see again. Someone who wasn't worth even a fraction of what we'd built together. For days after I originally posted about my situation, things escalated in ways I couldn't have predicted. My lawyer wasn't available for a few days, which meant I was stuck living with my wife in the interim. I really didn't want to go home and have any discussion, especially not about our relationship. But when I walked through the door that evening, I was ambushed. My wife had assembled her friends and my mother-in-law for what can only be described as an intervention. Instead of my wife taking a remorseful approach, apologizing, acknowledging what she'd done, showing any understanding of how much she'd hurt me, they decided a full court press was warranted. I was berated by all of them. Her best friend was definitely the ringleader, but they all joined in with a chorus of accusations and justifications. "She's been through a lot. You don't know what she's been through. You have no idea what it's like to face something like this. This was a one-time thing. At least she told you, she could have hidden it from you. She'll never see the guy again. And my personal favorite, you're an asshole for what you've been putting her through these last couple of days." I listened with what one of them later described as a dumbass smirk on my face. When there was finally a lull in their fury, I asked if they were all done now. Then I turned to my wife and asked if there was anyone else in her circle of friends, or anyone else period, that she'd forgotten to tell about our private marital crisis. I quietly informed all of them that I was going to sit down with their husbands and tell them about how they'd verbally abused me, shamed me, and tried to coerce me into staying with a cheater. Then I asked them to leave. I said that I'd had no say in the entire event that had destroyed my marriage, and so they had absolutely no say in whether I stayed or left. After they'd gone, my soon-to-be ex-wife sort of apologized. She said she regretted the entire thing. I told her there's a difference between regret and remorse. You regret what happened because of the cause and effect, I said. You have regret because your life will never be the same, because our relationship will never be the same, because you were wholly and willfully unconcerned about me and what I wanted. She asked if I had any questions, said she would answer them now no matter how disturbing. I said the one question I had was, why? Not necessarily why this guy, why this low-end, unattractive, unfit guy specifically, but why someone else in the first place. She said the cancer had scared her to her core. She felt like she was rushing toward mortality, and stepping out of that tunnel was appealing. After all this time of being a wife and mother and worrying about family, this was something just for her. An escape. The guy was just someone who'd been interested in her for a long time, someone she knew wouldn't say no, someone who was completely opposite to me. If I was going to risk my marriage, I told her, the woman would have to be a serious upgrade from you. I told her I'd seen them that night. That I'd watched her and him coming out of the bar together. That I'd watched her walk away from the bar hand in hand with him toward the hotel. You looked too familiar with each other, I said. Was there something going on before all this? She said no. But who knows if that's the truth. I told her that after all our years together, her lack of respect for me was astonishing. I finished by saying I would never be able to look at myself in the mirror again if I condoned that level of disrespect and stayed with her. I said I hoped we could go our separate ways amicably, and that I had an appointment with a lawyer later in the week. I asked her again to find other accommodations. She simply said, I am not going anywhere. We are not getting a divorce. I will give you all the time you need and do whatever you need to recover from this. We will get past this. She asked me to go to marriage counseling. I refused. Why would I go to counseling? I hadn't done anything that warranted needing a therapist's advice. I had her served with divorce papers and gave her a notice to vacate. The house was my premarital asset. She had no legal claim to it. She moved in with her mother, but I found her constantly coming by uninvited, asking if I needed anything, making desperate suggestions like, what if we had an open relationship only on your side? Or offering threesomes. It seemed pathetic and desperate. I had to keep rebuffing her, telling her she needed to call and ask permission before coming by. That message finally seemed to get through to her, that there would be no us going forward. She said she would drag the divorce out as long as possible, but so far she's been compliant with the process. The worst part of all of this was telling my daughter that we were getting a divorce and why. That conversation was followed closely by her begging me to give her mom another chance. I'm not sure I would have been afforded that same consideration if I'd been the one who cheated. A month later, I posted another update. There wasn't much new to report. We were in the process of getting divorced, but where we live, we're required to be legally separated for 1 year first. My soon-to-be ex-wife said she would give me whatever I wanted in the divorce if I agreed to attend marriage counseling. I'm still not interested. There was back and forth while we worked out what separation looks like in everyday life going forward. We'd only just agreed to the confines of legal separation, so as we moved toward defining the divorce language, maybe my stance would change. But I doubted it. The house was a premarital asset, so she has no claim to it. The only things she could go after are my pension, vehicles, and vacation property. I would counter that she'd lived rent-free for 20+ years and had her own money plus inheritance from her father. I might offer a top-up for her retirement since she'd been a stay-at-home mom while our daughter was young, but that would be the most I'd be willing to concede. I received a lot of messages about her friend group and my daughter, so I wanted to clear up any misconceptions. My daughter wasn't taking her mother's side. She's always been a mama's girl, but she's very unhappy with her mom right now. Her initial reaction was just shock. She'd held out hope that we'd work through our issues and stay together. Now that she's accepted that's not going to happen, she's been limiting her interactions with her mother. But at the end of the day, it's still her mom. The friend group situation was interesting. I did talk to the husbands, and they were upset at the level of complicity their wives had shown in aiding and abetting the contact and cheating. They made their wives cut off my wife, but that resolution seemed to have been forgotten by now. The best friend had been the ringleader and seemed to have taken perverse pleasure in actively creating scenarios where my wife and this guy would be in contact. At the very least, she'd been encouraging to the point that it caused her own husband to question her motives. It turns out she didn't like me at all, and this was her way of sticking it to me. I guess she wins. The best friend's husband told me there had been some sexting between his wife and mine in his wife's messages, but he said he was dealing with it. We met up, with him being apologetic for his wife's complicity. I told him it wasn't his fault. I just wanted to move on. I decided not to date anyone for a while. And I will not be getting married ever again. So that's it. I doubt I'll post again unless she wins the lottery and I somehow find it in my heart to forgive her. Which I won't. But I will be okay. Eventually. Day by day I'm rebuilding. I'm rediscovering interests I'd set aside. I'm reconnecting with friends. I'm learning to be comfortable in my own company.